Dolphins, elephants and trees are good at living in harmony with planets like ours. They live in harmony with their bodies, and they live in harmony with the earth. Polluting factories are the polar opposite, harming themselves and those around them. Together they represent the environmental extremes our species has spread out between. Primitive tribes, like rainforest villages, are our dolphins, our elephants, our trees. They live in harmony with themselves and the planet around them. They are the environmentally skillful side of our species. Scientists and politicians are the polar opposite, delving too greedily and too deep on the other extreme, so to speak. This curve is called the Gates curve. It maps our species from skillful people who live respectably through to the unskilled. Imagine you're a parent with 3 kids. You've 2 sons, politics and science, and a daughter, nature. One day, while keeping an ear open for your kids, you hear the sound every parent dreads. A cry breaks the silence. It's dreadful. It's piercing. You drop everything. You rush in. You rush in to find your daughter, nature, bruised and bleeding. She's lost fingers and toes. She might lose a limb. You are no doctor. You're panicking. You turn to politics and science. You ask them, "What happened? What happened?" You're asking them. Science spoke first. Nature is suffering. Science said it's grave. It's serious. She won't survive unless you invest in me. Give me the love she needs so that I can develop new technologies. I'll turn your love for nature into new factories, into new machines. I can save her. Love me. Politics spoke next. Yes, politics said nature is injured. She's suffering. It's serious. Give me the love and support she desperately needs right now. Give me your love for nature so that I can help her. You know, like I'm helping homeless people and street kids. When all of a sudden, a bright yellow fish appears and asks, "What kind of parent turns their back on an injured child and dotes on the healthy kids instead?" The fundamentals are wrong. It's time for Admin 101. Pretend human civilization can be boiled down to a tender process in which the entire Gates curve is allowed to compete by submitting tender proposals. In turn, governments adopt the best proposals in order to be the best they can be. 2 hallmarks of a fair system are a wide range of proposals which are often contradictory, and these healthy outcomes. Let's time travel, demographically, back to the Middle Ages in Europe. Let's visit the period before Europeans separated church and state. Governments of the day were ignoring the best proposals being presented and rubber stamping everything being proposed by the church. It didn't take long before ordinary people noticed the problem. The more their nation forbid free and fair competition, the worse their nation became. Our ancestors separated church and state in order to correct this problem. Let's roll the clock forward to today. The fundamentals of climate change science are all wrong because governments are rubber stamping everything science proposes while pretending that everybody else is unworthy of consideration. A hallmark of this corruption is the absence of contradictory choices. The man will use words like unscientific, superstitious, religious, wrong, or indecent in order to discourage and censor dissent. The cost is this decline in the systemic health of the nation. The Gates curve spreads humanity out, from environmentally skillful through to the unskilled. Nations are squandering the skillful side of the Gates curve by pretending that less skillful people are the best we have. Let's cover 3 examples of this administrative corruption. Suppose scientists created a device that detects carbon and placed it in a thriving forest teeming with life. The Earth's living species are carbon-based, and I mean every class. Plants, animals, fungi, protista, eubacteria, and archaebacteria too. Nature is a carbon-based phenomenon. Fighting carbon on a planet home to carbon-based life draws attention to the carbon, which is found everywhere, across land and sea, big and small, living and dead. Ambiguity is the problem with carbon and your carbon footprint. To make matters worse, carbon atoms are invisible to the naked eye. Only the polluting side of the Gates curve knows where good carbon ceases being good and becomes bad. Your ability to tell pollution and animals apart is a thing of the past. Your willingness to celebrate science and state decides your environmental worth. Do you think polluters would prefer to blind the world because a blind populace is more malleable? Our ancestors had eyes that see. Good carbon they called nature, and bad carbon was called pollution. Carbon dioxide, also known as CO2, is important to plants. Plants need it for photosynthesis. Carbon dioxide and water are the ingredients, if you would. They combine, with help from the heat of the sun, to form glucose and oxygen. Plants use the glucose to grow, and more. Plants release the oxygen into the atmosphere. Each plant species evolved to prefer unique amounts of the carbon dioxide, water, and heat necessary for photosynthesis. Low levels are too low for plants to thrive, high levels are too high. The Earth's current levels of CO2, water, and heat are too low for plants to thrive as a rule. Greenhouses allow farmers to raise the levels of CO2, water, and heat to match the higher levels that most plants evolved to prefer. Which begs the question, if CO2 levels are low compared to plants, why are scientists telling people that CO2 levels are high? Scientists, like the US-based National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA, are saying carbon dioxide levels are the highest they've been for the last 800,000 years. To which farmers are responding, plants have existed for roughly 700 million years. 700 million years of evolution looks like this when scaled against 800,000. 800,000 years is equal to a mere, minuscule 0.11% of the truth, or 1/10 of 1%. 1/10 of 1%, farmers continue, is too small to base national and international environmental policies upon. Worse, insisting that 1/10 of 1% rule the day is historically absurd. On a planet with CO2 levels so low, farmers are pumping CO2 into greenhouses in their agricultural efforts to recreate the established evolutionary preferences of plants. If the Earth's CO2 levels were perfect, farmers would ignore CO2. If levels were high enough to harm plants, farmers would remove CO2 from their greenhouses. If levels were low enough to limit plant growth, farmers would raise levels. Farmers would purchase the relevant equipment from agricultural supply stores. Agricultural supply stores are open to the public. You could visit and ask the store whether farmers are raising or lowering CO2 levels. Steam power thrived during the early Industrial Revolution, helping humankind to dominate. However, it proved to be too heavy, dirty, and expensive to spread as far as the home. A limited adoption meant a limited increase in the horsepower per person. Steam's limited adoption hurt nature a limited amount because there's a correlation between horsepower and environmental harm. The internal combustion engine came next. Its smaller size, lower cost, and greater utility helped it spread as far as the home in products like vehicles, chainsaws, bikes, and boats. The amount of horsepower per person ballooned, and our parents hurt nature more than our grand and great-grandparents. The electric motor is up next. It is smaller, cleaner, more user-friendly, cheaper to produce, easier to maintain, and more powerful than a fossil fuel engine. It has spread into a greater number of tools, vehicles, and appliances, and will spread further. The electric motor is going to hurt nature more than the internal combustion engine did because it will subject nature to more horsepower than ever before. Everybody understands how a carrot on a stick is supposed to work. For example, a kid can have pudding if they eat their vegetables. Environmental prizes are supposed to be the carrot on a stick that encourages and rewards a love for nature. The prizes should entice people away from the unhealthy side of the Gates curve towards the healthy, because that's how a carrot on a stick works. Dangling a carrot is one of the simplest of strategies, and yet you've been watching celebrities, scientists, and politicians win rubber-stamped environmental prizes without having to compete against anybody else, let alone anybody skillful. To make matters worse, this portion of the Gates curve is quick to insist that scientists, politicians, and celebrities are so environmentally good. Everybody else is little more than a disinformation campaign, fake news, or mentally ill. Earth-like planets are home to millions of childbearing species. The human body is always going to want to live on planets like this because our bodies crave the nutrients, our hearts and minds the majesty. Learning to coexist is required if we ever want to become a reputable, respectable species. The key to turning a corner environmentally doesn't lie in fighting carbon nor in electricity. It rests in making three fundamental changes. Tolerate every lawful environmental belief like this. Reposition environmental prizes, moving them from the unhealthy side of the Gates curve to the healthy. And police environmental crime wherever pollution, toxins, and degradation exist. Let's play a game in which villagers compete for environmental prizes positioned here. The game will discover who the skillful people are. Scientists and politicians can bring as many electric motors, graphs, and cubes of captured carbon as we want. Religions may field their holy books, kindness, and singing perhaps bear with me. Hippies their crystals, chakras, and tie-dyed goods. Rainforest villagers, their scarification, tattoos, face paint, should they choose to. If fighting carbon and one's carbon footprint are competitive strategies, teams will adopt them. If electricity is the secret source to life on Earth, teams will practice and believe. However, if modern environmentalism proves to be a talkative cup of weak tea, like this demographic would suggest, then modern environmentalism will lose to much of the Gates curve. Humanity needs a game like this because we need to discover which tools and practices skillful peoples are using. We don't know what works and what doesn't because the man is actively suppressing environmental beliefs other than his own. People cannot begin making informed decisions in order to shape their lives at a pace they can afford until the key differences twixt unskilled and the skillful emerge. It's with the game in mind that I present the Gates Curve. It was named after a pair of philanthropists. The Gates Curve is a simple way to ask, are you willing to tolerate the environmental beliefs of these adults and their kids? Position your environmental prizes here, where the earth is visibly healthy, and crown the best team as humanity's most capable custodians. Please, thank you, and good luck. Stick around if you feel like lingering. I have a book to sell bookworms, animation to sell collectors. The End is a thought-provoking book of mine, a doozy. It's illustrated and beautifully written, I think. I'd like bookworms to take a chance on me, especially the reviewers. Book reviewers decide which works live and which die. I pray they're in a good mood. The End is $8 US, link in the description. Next, on screen are 3 looping MP4 artworks available as NFTs. I understand why NFTs have a bad rap. Fair cop, but it wasn't me. NFTs are my best bet when it comes to funding animations on the social media space. Please, internet sleuths, if drama is your bread and butter, try the breadcrumbs linked in the description. The South African Presidency, Office of the Minister for Intelligence, Life Unworthy of Life, corpses piled 143 victims deep, they're all there. Do some digging and you'll help me blow the whistle on a bag of criminals. Lastly, anybody is welcome to monetize this video by re-uploading it to their own social medias. You just need to keep the video intact. I'll give up on the ad revenue in the hope of selling more books and artwork. Thank you.